Welcome to SEL in EDU.
where we discuss all things social and emotional in education.
I'm Krista.
And I'm Craig, and we are your hosts on this journey.
This podcast is created in partnership with Pennsylvania ASCD. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to SEL in EDU. I am here with Craig as always. Craig, how are you?
Oh, I am holding up well as I'm just fanning. The waves of the end of school is happening here in the almost mesquite Boston, where the temperatures rise from 40s to the 80s, all in the same day. So I personally feel like I'm having a hot flash, but I think it's gonna be all right.
And you're from New Orleans,
I
so
am from New Orleans. Like this is like I feel disrespected because I just couldn't manage the whole wave of temperatures today. And yes, I am accustomed to a little humidity, but I'm just like it would be a whole different podcast if I just was like pulling this shirt off. But I'm gonna try to persevere.
well, for those of you who are listening to the audio, we do have the video that drops on YouTube.
Oh gosh.
So we might be seeing Craig jump around a little bit.
Oh gosh.
Oh, well, and wait till you hear where our guest is from too. So we're going to tap into that a little bit. We are here with the amazing Naomi Church. I met Naomi 2 years ago, and every time I talk with her, I learn something new, and she's so inspiring, and she's just absolutely brilliant. So let me go into her bio to bring everybody else up to speed. Naomi Church is a speaker, author, experienced educator, and credentialed coach. She served in a large public school district for almost 20 years as a professional development specialist, math intervention specialist, RTL coordinator, instructional coach, and teacher leader. Naomi is passionate about professional learning and building capacity in teachers and families to increase student success. All the way piping in from the humid Florida is Naomi Church. Hi, Naomi. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And yeah, I am in South Florida, where almost every day feels like your bathroom does right after you get out of the shower.
Oh my gosh. This is going to be quite the podcast today. If that should be a quote right there. How do you pin that to your page, huh?
That makes me feel like I can't breathe. I open up the doors as soon as I can in the bathroom and try to get that air clearing out. That's muggy.
You know what? You get used to it. I'm originally from Chicago, but I've been down here for about 20 years. And now when I leave the state, I feel dry everywhere. My eyes hurt.
I didn't think about that other side of it. So that makes a lot of sense. Well, Craig, I was telling you that Naomi and I were just on a call because we do some collaborative work around curriculum development, and she is a master in math as well as universal design for learning, not to be confused with understanding by design. And Naomi, you mentioned a new way of thinking about facilitating learning in a classroom that we all might be familiar with. The gradual release of responsibility. The teacher does, the students do together, and then they do independently. And you said something that I wanted to learn more about. So would you mind recapping those pieces? And for Craig, I'd love to know if you had heard of this before as well.
Absolutely. So we were talking about how really a lot of teachers, especially in elementary, they learn how to teach around what effective reading instruction looks like. And then we tend to just apply those things in mathematics. And there are some wonderful researchers in math education right now who have made a lot of strides in the last decade or so. And what they found is that we can't teach math the same way that we teach reading, which is not a surprise when you think about it. But they've really been pushing this idea of productive struggle. So instead of the typical I do, we do, you do, in effective math education, it can look like you do, we do, I do, so that students are starting out with ownership. We know that in mathematics that students make the most meaningful learning gains when they make connections to the math, when they make discoveries about it themselves, when math is really about problem solving and solving puzzles and critical thinking. And so by throwing out a problem, a purposeful problem, so that the struggle is productive and we give them a chance to work through it before we fill them with all these like preconceived notions, right? Before we tell them what it's going to be and how they should think, we allow them to come up with these solutions and work through the things together. And then we can pull them into the group and pull in people's ideas and look at how different groups can attack the same problem so differently with different resources and different strategies. And a lot of times what comes up, what I think is most interesting, is that those are all the same strategies you probably would have taught anyway in the I do that the teacher would have taught. But because the kids came up with them, they're meaningful, they're memorable. And we could even call that like, oh, this is Craig's strategy. I love that Craig came up with this. And then the other kids the rest of the year will be like, I'm going to use Craig's strategy. It's great. And we see this a lot in cognitively guided instruction. So that's it's CGI. There's a great book that's out, and there's a lot of research behind that too, with problem solving and letting the kids explore and be the owners of the learning.
Hey, Craig, have you heard of that? That to me, I'm like, tell me what that looks like in a math classroom. And then as she described it, like, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I haven't heard of this phenomena. I was thinking about a professional session. I think it was done by someone from CAS that talks about brain science and UDL and the learning brain, and they talked about like these networks of how your brain functions, or just how it is how different parts of your brain are engaged in the learning process. And so and I'm pulling for weeds, but I remember just the visual. So they talk about like, the front of the brain, and I believe that that's tapping into like strategic networks. And that's the how. How are we learning? And I think the center of the brain, if I'm not mistaken, is why we learn. And so that's about the interest. That's about our effort. It's also helping us to regulate. So like I'm having a whole lot of stimuli based on the humidity in my office, to the wonderful checklist of things that need to be done. But my focus is on like, why am I actually engaged in this learning process? And then there is the what, which I think is at the bottom of the brain, and it focuses on like what representation, if I'm not mistaken. That's like perception, that's language, that's comprehension, and how young people are pulling that out. And even today, I spend a lot of time just talking to young people about understanding your brain. It has the ability to grow infinitely, so you don't have to feel like you won't continue to grow and get smarter. There's this phenomenon around neuroplasticity that you will continue to learn and grow and just feel comfortable, even being uncomfortable with whether or not you'll get that math question right today. That because we were doing a state assessments, and so sometimes it's like, just rub your forehead, and I got sweat on mine for those who can't see. So just go ahead and rub it down, and this would be a wonderful way for you to just know from that front of the brain that it's all right. You're going to be able to just direct your attention right there on the task at hand, and knowing that you can rub the sides of your face, and you have all the things you need. You can speak and communicate. Your brain is great. You can understand some tough stuff. And then understanding there's something bigger, with how you are persisting, even when things get tough, and how you regulate things. And so just knowing that all of that's super important. And that, I combine that, and maybe that's some Zaretta Hammond as well, who talks about culturally responsive teaching in the brain. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking about. I don't know if all of that ties into what you just shared, Naomi, but that's what came to mind as I thought about some of this.
Yeah, so I'm super passionate about universal design for learning, and I love to tie UDL in with math any chance that I get, because I find that even people who are familiar with the UDL framework have trouble seeing the practical applications within a math classroom. And I love what you said about neuroplasticity. We think a lot of times as educators that we need to make things easy for kids, that we need to make it easy for them to learn or retain something. And we're not taking into account that their brains can learn and grow, that we don't have to make math easy, right? We can make math engaging so that they're excited to learn it and grow their brain and make new connections. And so we think about facilitating in a math classroom instead of being like the giver of knowledge.
Yeah, I love how you said engaging, not easy. And when we connect that to social emotional learning, I worked with a school district in Georgia where one of the administrators said, so SEL is taking stress away from the kids, right? I'm like, no, because stress is good for us. There's eustress, but then there's distress. And being right in the middle is what helps move us, that challenges us, that helps us grow. And so you mentioned productive struggle. And so, can you talk a little bit more about what productive struggle looks like compared to, you had a different term for it. I've used, and I think which is great for elementary kids, I've used uh, productive struggle and destructive struggle for the older students. Could you talk a little bit more about productive struggle and what that looks like?
Yeah, so one of the great authors, researchers that I follow is Julie Dixon, and she's out of the University of Central Florida. And she talks about just in time scaffolds versus just in case scaffolds. And a lot of times, especially in mathematics, we tend to do this just in case scaffolding. I don't want it to be too hard for you. I'm going to help you. And especially in elementary, right? Like these are our babies. We want to take care of them. And so I'm going to put all these supports in just in case. And then what happens is we take away the thinking from the students. We've given them too much upfront. So she is a strong proponent of just in time scaffolding. And that is a key element in productive struggle. So there is a difference between like frustrating struggle and productive struggle. If I throw out a problem that is years above your ability level, you're just going to be frustrated and shut down. If I push it just beyond your ability level and have tools available, but I'm not telling you which tool to use, I'm not telling you how to use it, there's stuff here that you can use, then we get this productive, happy place of kids being able to work through things, have meaningful conversations. And really, the teacher has to be very involved in this process. If you're allowing these groups to work in productive struggle, you have to be circulating to be able to give that just in time scaffold, since we're not going to overrun everything with these just in case scaffolds.
That phrasing is really, really powerful. And it reminds me of Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. So where the students are at, and then what they can't do yet. And that middle space is the one that you're talking about. It's like, what can you do with supports? And sometimes supports are not the teacher, right? It was what you were saying about being in a group with other people and having that dialogue and those conversations because they're growing together. And I see a very strong SEL piece coming in here, because we have self-management, and we talk about, what do you do when you have struggle that is not productive? How do you respond to that? How do you set and work towards goals? And then how do you do that in a group of people so that you're still communicating effectively? And so the part where you said about the teachers really moving around is critical to that success. And I also think that in and tell me if this is the case. I'm thinking that if it's just in time scaffolds, or just in time, as opposed to just in case, the teachers have to feel very confident that they can meet those students' needs in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be confident in what it is that you're doing, but I honestly think it ends up being less work, because instead of in a math block having to come up with 20 problems, we're talking about one problem and letting them sit and explore it for 15, 20 minutes and then come together. So you only have to find one well-constructed problem and think through what some of these different ways that they might solve it might be. And, full disclosure, I've absolutely had kids, even first graders, right? 6-year-olds who have come up with solutions to problems that I did not anticipate. Like, wow, I never would have thought of it like that. But it's amazing. And you take those teachable moments as they come. And I think it's even okay to say, wow, I've never thought of that before. This is really neat. Can you tell me more about your thinking? But something else you said really resonated with me. When we think about this social emotional piece, in order to have this happening in a classroom, this productive struggle, these kids having this mathematical discourse and potential disagreements, and no, that's not how you do it, it's this way. You really have to have this culture and this psychological safety in the classroom where it's okay for us to make mistakes. It's okay for us to disagree with each other. When the teacher gives me feedback, it's to help me learn and grow, not to tear me down and tell me that I'm terrible at everything that I'm doing, right? So I love it, and it almost can sound easy, but there's a lot of background work that has to happen in a classroom for that to really be successful.
One of the things that this has me think about, especially in a mathematics classroom, as math teacher for a number of years, I think there's a vulnerability that teachers feel about. Well, what if if my scholars aren't growing, they don't get the answers right? Does that mean that I failed? I think really solid, like some of our best teachers know how to facilitate great questions. And they really get young people to be metacognitive about their thinking. And so we'd love to hear a little bit more about what does that look like, I guess, as you are leading and guiding teachers through these processes of not over scaffolding, but for them to really formulate really solid questions and allow students to build off of the thinking that's in the space, including within themselves. So I would love to just kind of hear what your experiences are with that.
I think that it has to back up and start with growth mindset. Honestly, the teacher has to start with this mindset of the kids can learn and grow, and then encourage growth mindset culture within the classroom so that the students know that they can do it. So Joe Bowler out of Stanford University talks about how a lot of students see math as a performance subject, but they see like ELA or social studies as a learning subject. I go there to learn things, but I go to math class to do them. I just have to perform and give an output. I have to get a certain amount of problems right on a timed test. So there's a lot of mindset work that has to be done about why I'm there and what my purpose is, right? But before you can really even dig into those other pieces. And it has to be a safe place to make mistakes, and we have to have other opportunities in place besides memorization and drills and stuff to send that message.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a conversation I had with my brother, who called me a number of weeks ago and said, the school that my kids are in elementary, are moving towards a classical model of education. And I needed to look it up because I wasn't familiar with it. And I'm seeing like and my understanding of what I could read was this philosophy that, and I'm sure if anybody out there is listening to this and works in a classical education school, please feel free to comment or to message me and to tell me if I'm not understanding what it is. But in my understanding, it's a lot of memorization and fact filling of students in the early years. And then as they get into middle school and then into high school, the expectation is that they can create and synthesize and analyze. And I said to my brother, one of my philosophical foundations as an educator is that all students at all levels can learn at high levels. Like, I don't think it's a matter of having to learn facts before you can work at high levels. And I know that Naomi, one of your personal philosophies is that all students can learn. And it's about creating inclusive opportunities for all students to be able to access the learning. And I as I'm learning from you about universal design for learning, I'm learning that following a UDL process or framework can help teachers provide those inclusive opportunities. Could you talk, if somebody hasn't really had a good idea about this framework, could you talk a little bit more about what that looks like and what the components are, so that we can make this learning accessible for people, for all students?
Yeah, so I made a note because I was listening to some of your previous podcasts and you had Dr. Felix on, and he said that there was this question that changed his life. And then I was really intrigued because I was like, ooh, what life-changing question is this? And he said, what if we stopped looking at what's wrong with people and started focusing on what is right with people? And to me, that just is what universal design for learning is all about. It is taking this framework to literally address that question. So instead of trying to fix kids and make them better, and instead of thinking about what is wrong with them, UDL gives us this like nice, neat little package to really dig into what are their strengths? What can they do? How do we change the learning environment to eliminate some of these barriers and challenges so that we're opening up learning and including everybody in the learning instead of trying to like fix what's wrong with the kids so that they can learn it? Why don't we fix the way that we are approaching things in the first place? And so I really think that Craig did a great job of giving the background on UDL and explaining the framework. It is broken up into these three main principles of engagement, representation, and action and expression. But that's really, if you look at the framework vertically, it's in these columns. It's green, purple, blue, and I'm a big fan of color coding. I see colors in my head for everything. But what a lot of people don't know is that you can look at the framework horizontally too. So you can actually look at these rows, and across the top is accessibility. And these are like base entry points into UDL and making learning accessible. So literal access, meaning if somebody is visually impaired, is there a screen reader? Is there a way for them to listen to it? An audio option? Is there a way to blow up the text so that it's really large so that they can access it that way? Right? It's those kinds of things. It's having maybe picture representations of things. And it's that like base level of access. Then the next row really gets into building understanding so that we get a little bit deeper into the comprehension. And then The last row is about internalizing. So this is where we get like deepest into it. And I think that this is where we see the most connections with SEL, where we're looking at creating expert learners who take ownership of their own learning, where they're aware of their strengths and how to apply them so that they can capitalize on what they do well.
I think that Krista and I do this double Dutch thing that happens from time to time in regards to questions. So just know that that phenomenon happens where we like, okay, who's going to jump in
Well, I
next?
know I see we have a super secret document in the back end, and I see that Craig
No.
has been. I'm interested. I'm ready.
Oh, it's all good. One of the things that some of this has me think about are, what we do here at my school community. We start the day with morning meeting. And anyone can start the day in morning meeting leading a conversation around a host of things. It could be what did you carry into your into the space today in regards to like your affect, the emotions, and the things that may have helped you to arrive at the place you are. It could be looking back at how did we do on homework or a classwork assignment or things like that, setting the tone with goal setting. Um, but there also are other avenues and ways that I've seen remarkable teachers utilize the time and space, just setting the tone in the morning to talk about how students see themselves or saw themselves based on some of the experiences that they may have had in class. And so some of our teachers doing experiential learning and bring kids out and having them use their hands and minds and bodies to do things, which is great. Some are pushing young people in really rich discussion and questions and answers. But some of it is really also talking about how do you think some of these decisions have made someone else feel, and what are some ways we can do something differently so everyone here can win or thrive in our classroom community. And I think about one conversation that I was having with our Student Government Association, and we're having some big top level questions and conversations about just how we can be better as a community and talk about culture. And one of the things that our young people has talked about is, why is it that we have not gone out and spent more time out in the community, going on field trips, seeing what else is going on in the world? Because while yes, some of us have opportunities to travel and go with our parents and things like that, we don't necessarily always have the opportunity to connect these big grand ideas to the world around us that we live in our community. And so this made me think about this wonderful teacher. I think she's out of New York, was introduced to me through a conference, and she did these math talks and math walks. So she took them on the neighborhood, and she weaved in, geometry. She weaved in angles. Well, that's part of geometry. Sorry, fractions, money, and other things, and really just said, I want you to see all of the math you can in this particular square. So maybe, one city block, but I want you to find all the ways that math is shown here. And it was phenomenal to see young people doing all kinds of math problems, math conversations, and even talking to some of the community members, store owners and whatnot about this big project that their teacher had them doing. And so I am hopeful that we have some remarkable educators who are listening to us today, who are pushing themselves beyond their boundaries and really staying open-ended in regards to project management or creating some passion ideas like this that may push even some of our most timid learners to be more expressive in their thinking and show that they are thinking, that they are growing, and there's so many ways that they can demonstrate that they get something in class. And so I was spurred by what you were talking about, Naomi, and that kind of surfaced. I'm curious as I think about this passion idea. What spurred you to focus in on UDL as a passion?
Ooh, I love that question. So I spent 10 years as a classroom teacher, and I fully intended to teach general education. I taught elementary, where you teach all subjects. And because I was compassionate, I ended up with a lot of students with disabilities in my class, and I ended up with a lot of students with behavior struggles. And that's kind of what we do in education, right? This teacher can handle it. I'm going to give her more. And so I got like increasingly more and more students who were struggling every year because I could handle it, because I could build relationships with them. And I mean, now I'm talking about, 20 years ago, before I knew what, UDL was, or and social emotional learning, before we really had these like terminologies in place to express a lot of this. And I felt at times very much like I wasn't prepared for the situation that I was in. Like, what I was told teaching was going to be was not at all what was happening. Nobody told me I was going to have students with disabilities, and that I needed to know about this, that I needed to maybe have to teach things in different ways. And I hope that today's educators are better prepared, but it was a real struggle then. And so I became passionate about making sure that other teachers didn't feel that way. And I moved into an instructional coaching role at a school that had a particularly large population of students with disabilities. And I went into classrooms and helped them revamp things so that people could access them, so that we could just make it so that everybody could learn. Like, basically that simple. And I eventually got this opportunity to work at the district level in conjunction with a state discretionary project, where I was able to develop professional learning opportunities that really focused on this. And the first time that I really heard about UDL, and that I had the pleasure of hearing Katie Novak speak passionately about it, I was like, yes, this is it. This is like the thing, the clear way of explaining all of these things that I was talking about. It's giving the teachers tools and a framework to really think about how we can make learning inclusive, but to feel prepared to do it, instead of feeling like I was never told I was going to have to do this. Like, in the very large school district that I worked in, 80% of students with disabilities were included in general education for 80% or more of their day. So what that means is that nearly every general education teacher had at least one student with a disability sitting in their class, whether it was elementary or it's high school and you have them in one period or something like that. But this is something that everybody needs. This isn't something that was like just for those kids or like those teachers of those kids. That we all have students with disabilities in our class. We all have students who have stuff going on, but it's not diagnosed and we don't have a label on it in our class. And so we needed to know how to just make things equitable and inclusive and help people feel prepared to implement these kind of changes.
Yeah. But you have to be a teacher who believes that regardless of what intelligences you bring to the table, that you can do it. It has to be absolute. That in owning that disposition as a teacher, uh, because I see there are some teachers who get stymied by the fact that, like, now I got to figure out a way to, include this particular this student, and they have these other ways that they're expressing themselves, and I just don't know. how I'm going to be able to help them to reach what, some of the other students are doing. So I think UDL will help teachers, and you talked about growth mindset, really reframe how you see the young people in front of you, and that you can open yourselves up to a wide variety of tools that you may not have in your toolbox, but there are other teachers who are also figuring it out too, who have learners who just think differently.
And I feel very strongly that effective UDL implementation comes from the top down, not the bottom up. We can have these rock star teachers who are universally designing instruction in their classrooms, and they may or may not be sharing that with anybody else. They may be rocking it, right? And nobody else can replicate that. But if we start at the top, I work with some districts with professional development teams on how to universally design their professional learning, because we need to model it from the way that we teach the teachers. If the professional learning is universally designed and truly engaging, and we show the information in different ways, and we give the teachers a chance to show mastery in different ways besides just this multiple choice post test or this one follow-up option, then they get to experience it firsthand, and they more authentically take those pieces back into their classrooms, and we get more sustainable implementation.
Absolutely.
I'm snapping over here when you were talking about the professional learning, and that same thing with differentiated instruction and social emotional learning. Like, we have to model what we want to see continue. And so I admit too that I've been I feel like we could keep talking every single time we are on a call with a guest, because I just want to know more. But I also found it really interesting. Like, Naomi, I know you have a lot of publications around math and accessibility for math, and you have a blog through your company, Growing Minds. And one of the pieces I came across and clicked on was about roller derby and UDL. And so what people might not know about Naomi, because Naomi, you are so kind and compassionate, and then I'm like, you do roller derby? Like, my perception of that is like boom, 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 like knocking people out and like going to the finish line. And so I need to know you, and this relates to Craig, what you were talking about, where you see math everywhere, and we see UDL and SEL everywhere. They're not just isolated to our classrooms. And so can you talk a little bit about that particular blog post, and maybe how you see these concepts happening across contexts, and end with how can people reach you and your company and get a hold of you and learn more about your blogs and your work?
Sure. Okay. I started roller derby, gosh, at this point, I'm not even positive, maybe 7, 8 years ago. I actually grew up figure skating and competing in figure skating, which is like very much the opposite, but skating was a skill set that I had. And I wanted to be able to skate again, but I don't weigh the same as I did, 25 years ago when I was doing double jumps and stuff. And my brother-in-law said, well, there's roller derby. And I looked it up, and then I found out that there was a team locally, and he was like, but you probably can't do it because you're probably not tough enough. And that spurred me, right? Like, those are fighting words. So then I went to a practice and I saw it and I was like, I could do this. And so I joined the local team, and it is amazing. And when we talk about mindfulness, it is the ultimate mindfulness. It is one of the only times in my life when I am able to be 100% present in the moment. Because I'm telling you, when you're scared of getting hit and you think you're going to die, your mind does not wander to anywhere else. Like, I am totally in it. I don't stress about anything else. I don't think about everything on my to-do list. I don't worry about my children. Like, that is the time when I can just be focused on what's happening. And that is so freeing. And there is something to be said for being allowed to hit people and not getting in trouble for it. There are times in education where not even the kids, the adults, right? Where sometimes you're like, and this is the place where I'm allowed to do it. And it's fantastic. And roller derby is way more widespread in the US and internationally than people would think. If you look it up, there's probably a team near you. But so then, yeah, thinking about roller derby and UDL, I wrote this blog post on how roller derby is universally designed and how it's really one of the most inclusive sports I've ever seen. And so I was playing on a team with people who were 19 years old and people who were in their 50s. And we had this huge age range. There were people who were literal like bodybuilders who were personal trainers, and then teachers, nurses, vet techs, all different kinds of positions, people with different body types from super fit to actually large and overweight, different heights, and people had different skill sets, different gender identities, different so many different things where it felt like everywhere else you had to like fit into a role. And then when you came to roller derby, none of this stuff mattered. It didn't matter how old I was, how overweight I was. It didn't matter if I had kids. It didn't matter what my sexual orientation is. Like none of this stuff then coming to the table, I met people that I never would have met, and everybody has a way to contribute into this community with what they have being who they really are. And it is a place where I have felt included, where I've seen others come in and feel included. And it's really remarkable.
That's really, really inspiring. And I'm actively seeking hobbies right now. And that's a whole other podcast conversation for how that came about. I used to roller skate all the time when I was little. There was a roller skating rink right up the road from my house, and I'd walk every weekend. I would steal my mom's long hanging earrings, and I thought I was really cool because they would I remember it like it was yesterday, but I have to tell you, and as a mom of two, anytime I've been out skating or ice skating and I fall, it's not a good thing. So I feel like as you get older too, the falls are hurt a little differently. But I would love to go see that see. So next time I'm in Florida, Naomi, I need to come see if you're still out there and cheer you on from the sidelines. I'll be your biggest fan.
Nice. Yeah, the falling is very real. One of the first things they teach you is how to fall. So there are right and wrong ways to fall.
Yeah. It's been so amazing to talk to you. I don't want to forget, before we work on wrapping up, how can people get a hold of you on social media, your website?
So I started a company called Growing Minds Consulting, and you can go to my website at growingmindsconsulting.com. And you can access the blog right on there. There's the blog post on how roller derby is universally designed. And there are specific tie-ins to places in the UDL framework. There's also posts on math games and practical math strategies that you can use for getting to some of this mathematical discourse and some of this productive struggle. So there's a lot of great free stuff that you can pull from there. My contact information is also on there. And on Twitter, it's at Growing Minds K12.
Thank you. And just a little reminder for everyone out there, we are powered by Pennsylvania ASCD. Learn more about our upcoming conference in November, featuring yours truly, Craig Martin, as a keynoter. So I just want to put that out there. We're going to be opening up registration soon. So come see Craig in the flesh.
Well, I'm sharing the stage with the illustrious Krista as well, so I'm not doing it by myself. Mhm.
No, I'm just like,
I like
I'm
that
just
you left that
Uh-huh.
out, though,
for you.
Krista.
Right, right.
But Craig
Mhm.
is the feature. I'm like gonna
No,
pull off the chair for him and
okay.
and
You
maybe
all
ask questions, but he's the brain that you want to be picking and
okay.
hearing from.
Yeah, okay. SEL EDU family, like it's both of us. We both gonna be on the stage, and we gonna
Sounds
it was
amazing.
gonna be fun. It will be fun, but it's both of us on the stage together. We're gonna do a little fireside chat.
Yeah. So Craig has, and Naomi, you might have heard Craig wrap us up, and I can't wait to hear this every time because it just puts me at ease. It's like a mindfulness piece, and it's a good reminder for me as well.
Mm. Well, what I will say, our family, it has been an incredible, incredible, incredible time with Miss Naomi Church. Hallelujah, hallelujah, and SEL and EDU. I'm just saying. Please make sure you plug in, connect, share all of what was shared today because it will make you and your young people and your school community a much richer place. It is our honor to share this time and space with you, Naomi, and for all of our SEL and EDU family. We want to send y'all tons of light and we want to send you tons of love. And if nothing else, stay right by standing in the light. Y'all take care.